It was a tough time for me because I enjoyed the Griffith Show so much that I hated to leave.
I left because Andy had said he would never do the show longer than 5 years. Those few words from Don Knotts became one of television's biggest mysteries. For decades, fans believed they knew why the beloved cast of The Andy Griffith Show slowly disappeared. Some blamed money, others pointed to personal feuds, broken friendships, or behind-the-scenes drama. But before his death, Don Knotts revealed a very different story. What really happened wasn't the result of one argument or one bad decision. It was a chain of promises, misunderstandings, changing contracts, and quiet choices that forever changed the future of Mayberry. So why did so many familiar faces walk away from one of television's most beloved shows? Let's find out what viewers never saw. When The Andy Griffith Show premiered in October 1960, few imagined it would become one of the most beloved sitcoms in television history. Set in the quiet, fictional town of Mayberry, the series offered something millions of Americans were looking for. It was a place where neighbors looked after one another. Problems were solved with kindness, and every episode left viewers with a simple lesson about family, friendship, or doing the right thing. Week after week, audiences welcomed Sheriff Andy Taylor, his son Opie, the lovable Deputy Barney Fife, and the rest of Mayberry into their homes. The show quickly became one of television's highest-rated programs and a symbol of a simpler America. But behind that picture-perfect world, a very different story was unfolding. Making Mayberry feel effortless demanded perfection. Andy Griffith carefully oversaw every part of the production, constantly rewriting scripts and changing dialogue until every scene felt natural. That dedication helped make the show a classic, but it also created enormous pressure behind the cameras. Not everyone enjoyed that kind of environment. Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee, came from a respected theater background and struggled to fit into the show's lighter atmosphere. She often kept to herself and occasionally clashed with Andy Griffith and other cast members. Those quiet tensions slowly changed the mood on set. Then there was another problem few viewers ever knew about. Although The Andy Griffith Show became one of television's biggest successes, not everyone benefited equally. Andy Griffith earned substantial profits through his ownership of the series, while most of the cast worked under fixed contracts. Even Don Knotts, whose Barney Fife became one of television's most iconic characters, began the show earning just $150 an episode. Few people complained publicly, but as the show's success grew, so did the quiet frustrations behind the scenes. And long before anyone left Mayberry, one promise had already set the future of the entire cast on a very different path. A broken promise. When The Andy Griffith Show began, Andy Griffith told the cast he planned to end the series after 5 seasons. He believed leaving at the right time would protect the show's quality instead of letting it slowly fade. Don Knotts trusted Andy completely and had already planned his future around that promise. As the 5th season approached, everything unfolded exactly as expected. Believing the show was ending, Don signed an exclusive 5-picture contract with Universal Studios. It was a major opportunity and seemed like the perfect next step. His future appeared settled. Then everything changed. With the series still dominating television ratings, CBS offered a multi-million-dollar deal to keep The Andy Griffith Show on the air. Andy accepted, believing it was the right decision for the cast, the network, and the audience. But that one decision left Don trapped. He wanted to stay in Mayberry, but he had already signed a legally binding contract with Universal. Walking away was no longer an option. Still, there was one final chance to save the partnership. Don and Andy privately discussed a small ownership share, around 5%, as recognition for Barney Fife's enormous contribution to the show's success. But somewhere along the way, the conversation was misunderstood. Andy later believed Don wanted half of the entire property rather than a small percentage. A simple misunderstanding quietly replaced years of trust with confusion. Neither man wanted their friendship to end. Don honored the contract he had signed, while Andy moved forward with the series. Years later, Don finally explained what had really happened. "I left because Andy had said he would never do the show longer than 5 years." With that one sentence, decades of rumors suddenly made sense. It wasn't anger, greed, or betrayal that separated two lifelong friends. It was a promise that changed, and a misunderstanding neither man ever intended. Mayberry was never the same. Don Knotts honored his contract with Universal, even though it meant leaving the role that had made him a television legend. His final appearance came in the season 5 episode, Opie's Newspaper. When Barney Fife walked away, viewers immediately felt the difference. The laughter was still there, but something important was missing. The friendship between Andy Taylor and Barney had been the heart of the series, and without it, Mayberry no longer felt quite the same. The producers knew they had a problem. To fill the empty space, they introduced Jack Burns as Deputy Warren Ferguson in season 6, but it never worked. Fans compared every scene to Barney Fife, and Warren Ferguson never truly became part of the Mayberry family. After just 11 episodes, the character quietly disappeared. Yet Barney's departure was only the beginning. As the years passed, other familiar faces also began looking beyond Mayberry. Ron Howard had grown up on the set, playing Opie Taylor since he was just 6 years old. But after spending years watching directors and cameras at work, he discovered a new dream. He no longer wanted to be in front of the camera. He wanted to stand behind it. After season 8, Ron left the series to pursue directing, a decision that would eventually make him one of Hollywood's most successful filmmakers. His departure marked another turning point. Without Barney Fife, and now without Opie, the show slowly lost the chemistry that had made millions fall in love with Mayberry. The series continued under a new title, Mayberry RFD, but many longtime fans felt the magic had faded. For years, people assumed they already knew why everything had fallen apart. But the cast members who lived through it remembered a very different story. And when they finally began speaking openly, decades of rumors gave way to a truth that almost no one had expected. The truth finally came out. For decades, fans believed they knew why Don Knotts had left the Andy Griffith Show, but the man at the center of the story told a very different version. Before his death on February 24, 2006, Don spoke openly in interviews and in his memoir, finally putting years of rumors to rest with one unforgettable sentence. "If I had known Andy intended to continue, of course, I would have stayed." With those words, everything changed. The story had never been about bitterness or betrayal. It had been about a promise that changed, and a misunderstanding that neither man ever intended. Even more remarkable was what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Despite the rumors, Don and Andy never stopped caring about each other. Their careers took different paths, but their friendship endured. And when Don reached the end of his life, Andy was there at his bedside to say goodbye to the friend who had helped build television history. That quiet moment spoke louder than decades of speculation. Time also healed other old wounds. In 1989, Francis Bavier reached out to Andy Griffith and apologized for the difficulties between them during the show's production. It was a conversation that brought peace to a relationship many believed could never be repaired. Then, more pieces of the story began to emerge. Don's daughter, Karen Knotts, shared his memories through her memoir and stage production, Tied Up in Knots. Later, author Daniel DeVise uncovered even more details in Andy and Don, using interviews and television archives to explain how the famous contract misunderstanding unfolded. In the end, the truth was far simpler than the rumors. Money and contracts created confusion, but they never destroyed a lifelong friendship. The greatest loss was never Barney Fife leaving Mayberry. It was the many years people spent believing the wrong story before two lifelong friends finally revealed the truth, with honesty, forgiveness, and the legacy they left behind. In the end, the story behind the Andy Griffith Show wasn't about greed or betrayal. It was about a promise that changed, a misunderstanding that lasted for decades, and two lifelong friends who never stopped respecting each other. But what do you think? If Don Knotts had known Andy Griffith planned to continue the show beyond 5 seasons, do you think he would have stayed as Barney Fife? Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories just like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.